Now, drunk driving is a problem all over the world, but for some reason, it would appear as if here in South Africa, we have a much deeper problem when it comes to this disturbing phenomenon. There are legal interventions to punish those who defy drunk driving laws and also to deter those would-be offenders. But is it enough to help us in fighting this scourge? Now, non-profit organization aware.org has partnered with the Johannesburg Metropolitan Police Department. And for more on this, we're now joined by Carmen Mohapi, who's managing director at aware.org. Carmen, thank you so much for your time this hour. So what is the significance of this partnership between aware.org and the JMPD?
Good morning and good morning to the viewers. I think it's important for me to just give an understanding of who aware.org is. First of all, we are fully funded by the alcohol industry, and our sole reason for being is to curb the harmful use of alcohol. Drunk driving is definitely one of those issues. And as you mentioned, in South Africa, we've got a really big problem. What we've noted in other countries is that they've been able to reduce drunk driving incidents with an increased number of enforcements. And that's why this partnership with the JMPD is so important. But additionally to that is ensuring that we get effective prosecution, because we know that to change behavior, people need to feel the risks of getting caught and they need to feel the implications of getting caught. And that will only happen when there is an arrest and a prosecution. So we use these special breathalyzer machines with the JMPD, which doesn't require blood tests and therefore doesn't have the delays. And that's really important, and it's an underpinning of this partnership that we have with the JMPD is an increased number of roadblocks and making sure that those people who are caught drunk driving actually are prosecuted.
Right, talk us through just how widespread is the problem of drunk driving. We see the numbers every time, but clearly more still needs to be done, right?
Absolutely. I think, we always talk about fatalities, road fatalities, and frankly, one fatality on the road is too many. But we always talk about it during the festive season, either December or Easter. The reality, however, is that those fatalities are happening over the weekend and throughout the year. And that's why making sure that we've got these roadblocks happening consistently every weekend, and the JMPD officers are out there every weekend, Friday to Monday, working really hard, late hours to make sure that we've got this prosecution, because frankly, if we don't have the roadblocks, it's almost become socially acceptable in this country to have a couple of drinks, get into your car and drive. And I think we need to realize the responsibility that comes with driving is actually you put all road users at risks, not just yourself, when you choose to drink and then to drive.
And Carmen, we always hear of these initiatives, some of them even groundbreaking year in, year out, but we still have an issue with the numbers that continue to surge. Speak to us about how different or what makes this particular initiative so different.
I think the first thing that we have to do is we need to ask ourselves the tough question, am I part of the problem? Have you ever gotten into your car after drinking and drove? Have you ever seen someone doing it and not said anything? Because the fact that this has become so socially acceptable really does exacerbate the issue. We know that also law enforcement has a lot to do, and unless we take a stance as the communities and friends, unless we take a stance and we continue to think that this is acceptable, we are part of the problem. But what makes this so different is that for every week in Johannesburg, there will be a drunk driving roadblock every weekend, at least one. And included in that is the use of what we call EVAT machines, which I mentioned earlier, that really does stand up in court. So you go into this machine and actually we use that as evidence, and it really makes prosecution so much more effective. And we believe that that will build a case study that shows increased enforcement and prosecution has an impact, and it will reduce the number of fatalities.
And interestingly, behind these statistics of victims of drunk driving, numbers are ordinary, actually, people that are ordinary, family members and friends. How will this particular partnership drive the message home?
I think the important thing that we also need to note when we're looking at the stats 42% of victims are actually pedestrians. Now, when you think about the behavior of drivers and you think about the social system around the victims, it's not just the pedestrian or the driver or the passenger who's affected. It's livelihoods that are lost. It's people who've lost their parents. And in some instances, drivers even driving with their kids. I wonder if the behavior would change if parents realize that actually their kids could be taken away from them if they are caught drunk driving. There's so many risks, and I think we really need to take a strong, hard look at ourselves and ask ourselves, are we doing the best thing for our societies? Are we doing the best things for our families? And making the right decisions. Yes, there's laws, but also the laws are there to keep us safe as a society. But driving is a big responsibility. It's using a really big vehicle, and sometimes actually speeding also has a massive impact. What I think people don't realize is that they are more likely to hit a pedestrian, 3 times more likely after drinking and driving. And that could be a child, and you live with that trauma for the rest of your life. So make the right decision.
And at the back of that point you just made about drinking and driving, maybe talk to us about the actual legal levels of blood alcohol for drivers currently.
So we know that there's been calls for zero alcohol. And what I think people don't understand is just saying I'm going to have 1 beer or 1 glass of wine, could actually already be over the legal limit. Our call is just if you feel, actually you've been having a few drinks, but you still feel fine, why get behind the wheel at all? Just don't drink and drive. There are so many alternatives. Car schemes where someone can drive your car for you. You can call a friend, designated drivers. If you're planning to go out and you're having a couple of drinks, make plans ahead of time. It's you as an individual are not going to know actually what your blood alcohol levels are unless you're carrying a breathalyzer, which most people don't. So as much as that's the law, let's also just be mindful that we are unlikely to know that actually just 1 beer, I'm still okay to get into my car.
All right, Carmen Mohapi, thank you so much from aware.org joining us there for this important conversation.